The river did not care about decrees. It moved as it always had, slow, wide, indifferent to the empire built along its banks. But on this particular morning, the river carried something it had never carried before, a basket sealed with pitch, moving without direction. Inside, a breath. Egypt in those days was not just a nation, it was a statement. The pyramids were not monuments to the dead. They were announcements to the living. Power lives here. Power does not end here. And the men who built those monuments were not citizens. They were inventory. The Hebrew people had been in Egypt long enough to forget what freedom felt like. Generations had been born into the rhythm of the whip and the quota. Their backs bent under stone, their hands bled into the mortar, and still they multiplied. That was the problem. The empire could tolerate suffering people. It could not tolerate growing ones. A decree was issued. Every Hebrew boy born would be thrown into the Nile, not killed quietly, thrown, publicly, into the river that Egypt called sacred. It was a message written not in ink but in blood. Your God cannot protect what we choose to destroy. But one mother refused to believe that. She held her son 3 months past the decree. 3 months of muffled cries, of covered windows, of prayers pressed between clenched teeth. When she could hide him no longer, she did not surrender him to the river. She surrendered him to God through the river. There is a difference. She built a basket. She sealed it. She placed her son inside and set it among the reeds where the daughter of Pharaoh came to bathe. And then she walked away. That walk was the bravest thing in the story. Not the plagues, not the parting of the water. A mother releasing her child into a current she could not control, trusting that the God who made the river still moved above it. Miriam stayed behind, watching from the reeds, small, still, eyes open. The basket was found. The baby cried. The princess looked down at something she was not supposed to save, and she saved it anyway. He is Hebrew, her attendant said. She did not look up. He will live. A girl appeared from the reeds before anyone could speak. She offered to find a Hebrew woman to nurse the boy. The princess agreed. Miriam ran. The mother held her son one more time, not as his mother, but as his nurse, paid by the palace to raise the child they had tried to kill. God had returned him, not permanently, but long enough. When the boy was old enough, he was brought to the palace. The princess named him Moses, drawn from the water, and the palace received him as its own. Moses grew up inside the most powerful institution on earth. He learned its language, its posture, its logic. He was trained in the way of command, how to stand, how to speak, how to move through corridors without lowering his eyes. He wore the education of Egypt like a second skin, but something underneath never fit. There were moments, brief, unannounced, when he would see the workers in the distance and feel something tighten in his chest. Not pity exactly, something older, something personal. He began asking to visit the construction sites. The officers around him were puzzled. Princes did not go to the labor fields. I want to see what holds these walls up, Moses said. What he saw when he arrived did not hold walls up. It held men down. Bodies bent under impossible loads. Overseers moving through the lines with the casual authority of men who had never once questioned their right to strike another human being. The sound of it, the crack of leather against skin, the involuntary sounds that followed, landed somewhere inside Moses that Egypt's education had not been able to reach. He watched. Then one overseer raised his arm and Moses stopped watching. He moved without thinking. He stepped between the whip and the man it was aimed at. What followed happened fast. The overseer was dead before Moses fully understood what his hands had done. He looked left. He looked right. He buried the body in the sand and walked back toward the palace with the gait of a man pretending his heartbeat was normal. But Egypt always knows. The next day he returned to the fields. 2 Hebrew men were fighting each other. He moved to separate them. Why did you kill the Egyptian? One of them said. Moses felt the ground shift under him. The palace found out the same day. Pharaoh ordered his arrest. Moses ran not with a plan, not with a destination, just away, into the desert that waited beyond the empire like a silence nobody had named yet. The desert did not welcome him. It simply accepted him the way it accepts everything, without ceremony, without judgment, without any promise that he would survive it. He walked until the palace was no longer visible. He walked until Egypt's voice no longer echoed in his head. He walked until the only things left were sand, heat, and a guilt that had no address. He found a well. Around it, a group of women trying to draw water while a group of men pushed them back. It was a small injustice in a desert full of larger ones. Moses had just fled a murder. He had no standing, no reputation, no right to intervene. He intervened anyway. The men left. The women stayed. One of them looked at him with open curiosity. "Are you Egyptian?" "I fled from Egypt," he said. "Why? Because I killed a man." She looked at him for a long moment. "Come, my father's name is Jethro, the one who protects eats." He followed her home. Jethro was the kind of man who asked honest questions and waited for honest answers. He did not flinch at Moses' history. He did not offer false comfort. He simply made space at his table and said, "Eat, then tell me the truth." Moses stayed. Not because he had nowhere else to go, though that was true. He stayed because for the first time in his life, no one was asking him to perform. No one needed him to be Egyptian. No one needed him to be Hebrew. He learned the desert the way a shepherd learns it, its moods, its sounds. Where water hid under stone, how the wind changed before a storm. He became small in the best possible way, unimportant to the world, present to the moment. Zipporah did not treat him like a legend or a fugitive. She treated him like a man who had a lot to unlearn, and she was right. She gave him a son. Moses named him Gershom, stranger in a foreign land, because no matter how deep the roots grew in Midian, Egypt was still somewhere inside him, and somewhere inside Egypt a people were still bleeding. He knew it. He just didn't know what to do with knowing it. Years passed. The routine of the desert pressed itself into his bones. He rose early. He moved the flock. He returned. He slept. The past became something he carried quietly, like a stone in a pocket, always there, never spoken of. Until the morning everything changed. The bush was burning. That was not unusual in a desert. Scrub fires happened. What was unusual was that this fire had been burning long enough for him to notice it from a distance and walk toward it, and it was still burning. The bush was not being consumed. The fire had no source. The fire had no end. Moses moved closer. Moses. He stopped walking. The voice did not come from anywhere he could point to. It came from everywhere. It came from inside the fire and also from inside him. It was the first time in 40 years that something had called him by name and meant it. "Here I am," he said. "Do not come closer. Take off your sandals. The ground where you stand is holy." He reached down. He removed them. He stood barefoot in the sand and felt the earth differently than he ever had. "I am the God of your father, the God of Abraham, the God of Isaac, the God of Jacob." Moses covered his face. "I have seen the suffering of my people in Egypt. I have heard them cry. I know their pain. And I have come down to deliver them. I am sending you to Pharaoh. Bring my people out of Egypt." Moses looked up through his fingers. "Me?" He did not say it as a question about logistics. He said it as a man who knew exactly what he had done and what he was, a fugitive. A man who had run from his calling and convinced himself the running was wisdom. A man with blood on his hands and a stutter in his throat and 40 years of absence from everything he was being sent back to face. "I will be with you," the voice said. "What if they don't believe me? What if they ask who sent you? I am who I am. Tell them I am has sent you. What if I can't speak? I freeze, I am slow of tongue. Who made the mouth of man?" There was a pause that contained the whole of Moses' life. "Lord," Moses said finally, "please send someone else." It was the most honest prayer in the story. Not defiance, not rebellion. Just a man looking at the gap between what he was and what was being as was, and telling the truth about it. "Your brother Aaron will come. He will speak for you. But you will go. You will stretch out your hand. You will confront the king." Moses stood up, put his sandals back on, picked up his staff, and turned back toward Egypt. The return was not triumphant. There were no crowds, no announcements. Just a man walking back into the place he had fled, carrying a staff and a commission he did not fully understand. Aaron met him in the wilderness. The reunion was not sentimental. There was too much ahead for sentiment. They went to the elders of Israel first. The people listened. They bowed their heads. After generations of waiting, something had finally moved. Then they went to Pharaoh. The hall was large, the throne was high. The man on it had grown up in the same palace as Moses, which made this meeting something beyond politics. It was personal in ways neither of them acknowledged. "Thus says the Lord, the God of Israel, let my people go." Pharaoh looked at him the way powerful men look at inconveniences. "Who is the Lord that I should listen to him? I do not know the Lord. I will not let Israel go." Moses had expected this. What he had not expected was what came next. Pharaoh did not just refuse, he made the work harder. No more straw provided for bricks. The quota stayed the same. Find your own straw and still meet the numbers. The people collapsed under the new weight. They turned on Moses with the fury of people who have had hope offered and snatched away in the same breath. "You have made us hated. You have put a sword in Pharaoh's hand to kill us." Moses went back to God with the only thing he had left: honesty. "Lord, why did you send me? I came and things got worse. Nothing has changed." "Now you will see what I will do," came the answer. Pharaoh will let them go, not by kindness, by force. What followed was not negotiation. It was instruction. God did not argue with Egypt. He dismantled it, methodically, completely, one layer at a time. The river turned to blood, frogs covered the land, lice rose from the dust. Flies descended, livestock died, boils broke out across skin, hail destroyed what remained in the fields, locusts consumed what the hail had left. Darkness fell, not the ordinary darkness of night, but a thick, heavy, directional darkness that could be felt with the hands, a darkness that had weight. In Goshen, light remained. That was the detail that broke something in Egypt's story of itself. The plagues did not fall randomly. There was a line drawn through the air, invisible, absolute, separating the people of God from the empire that had owned them. Pharaoh could see the line. He could not cross it. He could not explain it. He could only harden himself against what it meant. He summoned Moses again and again. He made promises and broke them before Moses reached the door. He offered partial concessions. Go, but leave your children. Go,
but leave your animals.
Go, but not too far. Each offer was a version of the same refusal, dressed in negotiating language. Moses stopped negotiating. Take your children, Moses said. Take your herds. Not one hoof remains behind. All of us go or none of us go. Pharaoh's face shifted into something past anger. Get out, and never come back to see my face. The day you see me, you will die. As you have said, Moses answered, I will never see your face again. He walked out of the hall for the last time. That night, Moses gathered the people. What came next would need to be remembered, not just recalled, remembered, carried in the body. Practiced every year for generations so that no child would ever grow up not knowing what this night cost and what it meant. Choose a lamb, one for each household. Keep it 4 days. Then at evening slaughter it. Take the blood and mark your doorposts. Roast the meat over fire. Eat it with unleavened bread. Eat it standing, belt fastened, sandals on, staff in hand. Be ready to move before the meal is finished. Tonight, the Lord will pass through Egypt. Every firstborn will die. But where the blood marks the door, death will pass over. The line between life and death was not drawn by merit or history or bloodline. It was drawn by obedience, marked by blood, available to anyone who chose to trust it. The people did what Moses said. Night fell over Egypt like something with intention. What happened in the darkness is described in few words, because few words are enough. A sound moved through Egypt, not wind, not storm, not any natural thing. Every house unmarked by blood received what had been promised. The empire that had thrown Hebrew boys into the river now had its own firstborn taken in a single night. Pharaoh woke to a sound he had never made before. He sent for Moses before dawn. Get out, rise up, take everything. Go, serve your God as you said. And, a long pause, bless me also. The man who had said he did not know the Lord was asking the Lord's servant for a blessing. Moses said nothing. He turned and walked. The people of Israel moved, 600,000 men on foot, plus women and children, plus a mixed multitude of others who had seen enough to want to leave with them. They had lived in Egypt 430 years. They left in one night. Egypt did not sleep. The people pressed them to hurry, gave them silver and golden clothing, as if returning what 4 centuries of slavery had taken. They moved toward the wilderness. The sea was ahead. Pharaoh was behind. He changed his mind. It happened the way regret happens in powerful men, not as wisdom but as wounded pride. What have we done? We let our slaves leave. He summoned his chariots, the best ones, and went after them. The people of Israel saw the dust rising behind them and broke. The sea was in front. The army was behind. The math did not work. Moses, why did you bring us out here to die? We should have stayed. Slavery was better than this. Moses turned to face them. His voice was steady in a way that had nothing to do with confidence and everything to do with surrender. Do not be afraid. Stand firm. You will see the salvation of the Lord today. The Lord will fight for you. You need only to be still. Then he turned to God, and God said, Why are you crying out to me? Move. Moses raised his staff over the water. The wind came from the east, strong, sustained, impossible. Through the night it pushed the sea back until there was dry ground where there had been water. Walls of water standing on both sides. A path cut through the impossible, available only to those desperate enough to walk into it. The people walked, all of them, through the night, through the middle of what should have been the bottom of the sea. The ground was dry under their feet. The Egyptian army followed them in. At the moment the last of Israel reached the other side, Moses stretched out his hand again. The water returned, not slowly, all at once. The chariots, the horses, the army, consumed by the same sea they had confidently entered. Not one remained. Israel stood on the far shore and watched the water settle back into itself. smooth and quiet as if nothing had happened. What had been an army was now silence. Miriam picked up a tambourine. She had been watching since the beginning, from the reeds on the day of the basket, from the edge of the crowd on all the days between, from the back of the column through the night of the crossing. She had been watching for her whole life. Now she began to sing. The women followed her. The song spread through the crowd. Moses joined it. His voice was not eloquent. It had never been eloquent, but it was real. He sang with the lungs of a man who had run from everything, had been sent back to face it, and had lived to stand on the other side of it. I will sing to the Lord, for he has triumphed gloriously. Is it over? Someone asked. Moses looked out at the wilderness ahead. The road was long. The people were unruly. The lessons ahead would be harder in some ways than the ones behind. Hunger, water, murmuring, 40 years of wandering. The promised land was a vision on the horizon, not a destination in the hand. No, Moses said quietly, it has just begun. He never stopped being the man who stuttered, who had blood on his hands, who had run from his calling for 40 years. He never became smooth or comfortable or certain, but he became something more useful than certain. He became a man who showed up anyway. When God spoke, he argued, and then obeyed. When the people turned on him, he went back to God on their behalf. When the weight crushed him, he knelt in the dirt and admitted he could not carry it alone. He did not enter the promised land. That chapter belonged to someone else. But the whole story would be told for thousands of years, not because Moses was extraordinary, but because the God who sent him was, and because a man who believed he was nobody picked up a staff and went anyway.